The country Uzbekistan was recently featured on Nomad Capitalist's YouTube channel. But is the country really investable, or is it too early to pull the trigger? Uzbekistan underwent lots of reforms to make the country more attractive. The current government that's in place in Uzbekistan, they liberated the country and truly made it economically more appealing. But how long will these changes last? This is the question that we need to answer. The problem that we're seeing with countries in this specific region, we're talking about Eastern Europe, like the far eastern part of Eastern Europe, and Central Asia, is that many of the policies that are being made are actually not sustainable. A new party gets elected, they bring reform, make changes, make the country more appealing so that they can draw in more investors. We've seen this picture numerous times across multiple continents, but in many cases these reforms did not stick. And the reason why these reforms didn't stick is because legislation can be appealed. Typically, countries with authoritarian parties, authoritarian leaders, they tend to do better long term. Let me give you two examples. The UAE managed to grow its population by a lot over the past 2 decades. But had it not been for the UAE's authoritarian rule of law and authoritarian government, these changes that the UAE implemented decades ago would not have lasted. The UAE's results speak for themselves. Let's just take a look at the net millionaire migration that we're seeing in the UAE in recent years. The UAE is one of the countries with the highest migration of millionaires. While the majority of foreigners never managed to get citizenship in the UAE, many of the policies that had been implemented decades ago are still intact today. Yes, the UAE is a tax haven, attracting tons of investors, millionaires from all kinds of backgrounds to the UAE. However, very recently the UAE introduced a new tax rate which definitely shook a lot of investors. While the UAE successfully lured investors into the region, we really don't know how long the current tax laws will stay in place. The current tax incentives of the UAE are one of the biggest reasons why so many investors got drawn into the country in the first place. However, tax laws can be changed from one year to the next. For many countries, an authoritarian party may be required to continue pushing forward with current laws. Another example would be Singapore. Singapore is run by a very authoritarian party. We've seen this over the past number of years, specifically between 2020 and 2023, but it was already very clear before that. But let's be clear, had it not been for Singapore's authoritarian party, the country's laws, regulations, what the country stands for, its attractions, would have been turned over by a different party a long time ago. But because of Singapore's authoritarian party and way of ruling, the country managed to create results for the long term. Singapore managed to create sustainable results. And this is why Singapore is one of the most desirable countries for high net worth individuals in the 21st century. Uzbekistan is more like a new player in this field. Uzbekistan doesn't have the proof of concept to appeal to a large variety of investors. While Uzbekistan might be moving in the right direction in many ways, the lack of results, the lack of proof of concept really prevents investors from moving their money into the country. So yes, geopolitics play a role, and internal politics play a role as well. Uzbekistan may not have the political muscle to make this happen. The country has a heavy economic dependency on China. I wanted to make another quick comparison between the UAE and Uzbekistan. And it isn't just about the UAE, it's actually about another country that we're about to touch, and it is also located in the same region. What was really important for the UAE and why the UAE decided to open up its doors to the Western Hemisphere was because the country wanted to diversify so bad. Not too long ago, the UAE was heavily dependent on oil exports. Oil is a natural resource, and oil is limited. No matter how much oil you got, it is limited. And the UAE realized that at some point the country will be running out of oil. It is an undeniable fact. So it was very intelligent by the leadership of the UAE to open up its doors, foreign investors, make the country more appealing. They opened up, and the UAE had to accept Western influence, specifically Western cultural influence into the country. And at this point in time, over 88% of the UAE's population happens to be of foreign origin, a staggering number. I do believe that the UAE is a very successful country. Despite of certain issues such as the difficulty associated with obtaining citizenship in the country, owning land, and some other issues, I think the UAE is not the worst of places to invest in. Uzbekistan is a poor country, and hopefully the country's thinking will get it ahead in the long term, will help the country attract new foreign investors. However, it is important that you as a foreign investor have been informed about the current situation in the country, and Uzbekistan is a country where the rule of law is not particularly strong. Believe it or not, but certain courts do not exist in Uzbekistan at all. And for all you BRICS lovers out there, I wanted to add a couple of things in here too. Well, BRICS is demonstrated as this perfect alliance of emerging countries where everything is rosy. It's all sunshine and unicorns, but this is actually not the truth. If we just take a look at the major powers behind BRICS, we're talking about China, Russia, and India. China's and India's relationships aren't the best by any means. They just aren't the best. India wants the US as a form of protection against China. And China is heavily dependent on US imports. These countries, they all need another. The more the US shifts outsourcing to other countries, like we're now seeing in Mexico, the more China will be hurt in the long term. Because the US, the United States of America, is China's biggest buyer. But perhaps that is about to change. And I'm sorry to say, but BRICS has absolutely not proven anything at this point. BRICS is an alliance that is based on merely meetings. No significant progress has been made up to this point. As we know, alliances, they don't last forever. Most of them have an expiration date. But let's be honest, BRICS never got started to begin with. Russia's biggest fear is not America, it's China. Something that is rarely talked about on any platform. We also saw now the election that happened in Argentina, where Javier Milei decided to cut ties with BRICS. You heard me right, Argentina is not part of BRICS. Argentina seeks stronger ties with the West, not the East. And Javier Milei pointed out that he does not want to get involved with communism at all. Another country that's been featured on Nomad Capitalist's YouTube channel is Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is a beautiful country in terms of culture. If you're Muslim and you want to go to Mecca, you want to experience true Muslim culture, I'm sure Saudi Arabia is a fantastic place. Like the UAE, Saudi Arabia has one strong point. It is its oil. Saudi Arabia is very rich in oil. But because Saudi Arabia realizes that eventually the country will be running out of oil, it is time to diversify. And it is great to see that the current leadership of the country sees this trend or this possibility come to fruition early on. It's better to act early on than late. But let's be real. Going to Saudi Arabia as a non-Muslim is definitely a thing to do, because it takes a lot of courage to go to a country where your religion is not accepted. And Saudi Arabia is one of the strictest, if not the strictest, Muslim country in the entire world. Saudi Arabia operates by the Sharia law. There are many laws in place that Western expats should be aware of. But like Uzbekistan, Saudi Arabia really misses the proof of concept. There is little, if any, data available. And let's be real, being a Westerner in a very conservative, strict country that may not accept your religion at all, even simple things such as holding your girlfriend's or wife's hand may not be permitted in Saudi Arabia. There are a lot of cultural adjustments that you would need to implement to live in the kingdom. And if we talk about entertainment and drinking, it's probably a very boring country. And because it is in the middle of nowhere, it is a desert, there is not that much to do there. The last country that's been featured on Nomad Capitalist's YouTube channel is Egypt. Egypt is a beautiful country. There's nothing wrong with it. It's gorgeous, okay? The city of Cairo, a very impressive city. It's definitely very polluted, but it's a beautiful city, okay? And if you want to visit the pyramids, if you want to have the experience of a lifetime, then Cairo is the place to be. The largest channel in this industry has been pushing citizenship by investment programs in the region, specifically in Egypt. But how powerful is an Egyptian passport really? An Egyptian passport offers visa-free access to a very small, insignificant number of countries that you may or may not want to visit. Let's just be realistic here. Except for Egypt's cultural appeal, there isn't really that much to do there. Economically speaking, the country is not doing very well at all. The country is not rich in natural resources, and the country is experiencing a lot of agricultural issues as well. With limited agricultural resources, a good chunk of Egypt's food remains imported. But Egypt is a beautiful place, especially the Red Sea resorts. If you're any interested in going there, it's a beautiful place. It's a very popular vacation spot for Europeans and Americans alike. So if you're interested in visiting the country of Egypt, go ahead and do it. As always, thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite. We appreciate you, and we see you in the next video.